All right, this is John Colo with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. I'm coming at you from the 38th Annual ANMA Convention and Education Seminar. This is the American Naturopathic Medical Association. I've been coming to these conventions now for the last 5 or 6 years. You know, and me personally, I'm always on a quest to kind of learn, build, and improve upon what I know, and also realize that I really don't know a lot as well, even though I've been living this lifestyle specifically for 24 years. And I know there are people out there that say, hey, if you eat raw foods, you know, you're indestructible. Well, you know, from my experience, depending on what raw food diet you're eating, what kind of foods you're eating, you know, you could still even get heart disease and have a stroke or even heart attack. I'll put a link down below to a video I did with my friend David, who is a raw foodist, who had some challenges you know, with stroke actually, and had to basically reevaluate what he was doing and made some significant changes. You know, my goal is to prevent that from occurring in the first place, learning about some of these different mechanisms in the body and different adjunct, you know, therapies that can not hurt us, but only increase our health. Learn those for myself, but also more importantly, be the spokesman and share those with you guys, because I'm not aware of any other raw foodist people or people that are in a hardcore plant-based diet that are here, because there's a lot of, in my opinion, dogma in the naturopathic medical kind of like model. You know, there's some good basics and tenets, literally, of, you know, removing the toxins and eating a healthy diet, but that can get specifically challenging in this time, in this year, you know, where we live, with all the new toxins being developed and created and put into the food system, and glyphosate and all these things. So removing toxins and then eating the good food. And where is the good food, right? Can you go down to a local farmer's market or local, you know, Whole Foods, organic foods, get produce that's organic or even conventional if you can't find organic? Is that good enough? You know, my answer is simply no, not good enough. You know, that's why I grow my own food with certain fertilizers, certain nutrients. But beyond all that, you know, there's basically one nutrient we're going to focus on today. It's called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a very important nutrient that our body makes free and clear, but it doesn't make it always. And you might ask some people, oh yeah, if we just eat fruit and vegetable diet, we're gonna have enough nitric oxide. You guys ask certain plant-based doctors, they're gonna say, you know, you eat plant-based diet, you're gonna have enough nitric oxide. Well, that may or may not be the case, depending on many different factors, as you guys are learning this episode. This is probably one of the most important episodes that actually I've ever filmed, so I guys want you to pay attention to this whole episode, because the doctor that I'll be interviewing has worked basically his entire career on nitric oxide and has done a lot of research. I went to a handful of talks at this event, and his was a talk that really stood out the most to me. Like, wow, this guy is solid, he knows his stuff. And he's the only doc that I'm interviewing you while I'm at the ANMA convention here. So let's head inside and let's interview him. All right, so now I have Dr. Nathan Bryan, one of the world's leading authorities and experts on nitric oxide. Literally, this has been his life for 20 years now, like researching this and trying stuff and publishing studies and all this kind of stuff on nitric oxide. So I mean, I really have the expert here. So thank you, Dr. Bryan, for taking the time, you know, to be in my show today. And we're going to ask you some very important questions about nitric oxide. So actually, the first thing is I want to thank you for your excellent presentation you gave, your talk. I loved it a lot. I learned so much, right? And I wanted some of this knowledge out to my viewers, because it's things that just are not known by the general population, even some, you know, medical doctors out there. You know, there's the doctor that wrote a book, you know, how not to die from many different diseases, and basically his answer was plant-based diet, you know, has been proven to help with all these different things. But your talk here was, I think, how not to die from cardiovascular disease, which he has one of his topics, which is a major killer in the United States and even around the world now, as diets get poor and things start to, and other reasons start to occur. But it's not sometimes as simple as just having a plant-based diet, because even a plant-based diet, eating fruits and vegetables and even things like beets and things that may help raise our nitric oxide, we may not really be making it properly. So first off, for those of the people that don't know what nitric oxide is, do you want to explain this?
Sure, so thanks. Yeah, it's been a passion of mine for 20 years. I've been studying nitric oxide, and as I come to these conferences, I'll give 40 or 50 lectures a year, and I'm still surprised at how many people, including physicians and healthcare practitioners, who don't know what nitric oxide is. So that's really my mission, is to educate and innovate on nitric oxide technologies. But it's probably one of the most important molecules produced in the human body. It tells cells in the body what to do, how to communicate. It dilates blood vessels, increases blood flow. And so the earliest event in the onset and progression of any age-related disease is loss of nitric oxide production. So your body cannot and will not heal until you restore the function and signaling aspects of nitric oxide.
Wow, so it's a very important component to our health. Now, can you just, like, our body makes this free and clear, so some people might think like, oh, we have enough because our body makes it, but as you just said, that, you know, the levels that you produce or are able to produce or whatever goes down over time. So like, I know you had a slide in your presentation, like if you're really young, and you know, a lot of you guys watch me are young, and that's great, but I know there's some people that are getting up there and more mature in their age. But as you get older, your nitric oxide production goes down, so then you're not able to heal. Because why? Well, you know, in my opinion, and based on, you know, we're here for one specific task, to reproduce, to carry on our genes, and once we've done that and fulfilled that task, which usually doesn't happen in our later years, you know, nature doesn't care about us anymore.
That's right.
So you want to talk about the declining production, especially as you get older, and what you might see or feel or experience to know that maybe you're having some challenges.
Yeah, so there's two ways the body makes nitric oxide. One is through an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase, and that enzyme loses its function, usually about 10 to 12% of its function every 10 years. So by the time we're 40 years old, we only have about 50% of the nitric oxide we had when we were younger. So, and I think it's not coincidental, that's the time that people feel the effects of aging. So you don't perform as well as you did in the weight room or on the athletic field. You don't perform as well as you did in the boardroom. Your cognition kind of declines, and you don't perform as well as you did in the bedroom. So all that's related to blood flow and regulation of blood flow. So when you lose the ability to generate nitric oxide, you lose regulation of blood flow, and if cells and tissues and organs aren't getting enough blood and oxygen and nutrients, then they can't do their job. They fail, and that's when human disease sets in. So it's recognized in the literature, with 160,000 scientific papers now published on nitric oxide, that these fail because they lose the ability to make nitric oxide. So what we focused on is, number one, how does the body make nitric oxide? What goes wrong in people that can't make it? Because you can't fix something if you don't know what goes wrong. That's been the basis of my research. So we know how the body makes it, we know what goes wrong in people that can't make it, and we know how to fix it.
So you said there's two ways the body makes it. So you said one way is with the enzyme.
Yeah, and that's the enzyme that's found in the lining of the blood vessels. So it's called nitric oxide synthase. That's the enzyme that converts L-arginine into nitric oxide. And so for years, people have taken, or there's been a number of so-called nitric oxide products that contain arginine or citrulline and a couple of other things. But in the people that have lost the ability to generate nitric oxide, that's the pathway that's broken. So taking an L-arginine product is like putting gas in a car with a blown up engine. These people aren't out of fuel. They got plenty of L-arginine circulating in their body. They just can't convert it. And then the other way is using diet. So eating green leafy vegetables, things that are enriched in what we call inorganic nitrate, that then the body, if this system is intact, can metabolize nitrate into nitric oxide. But you know, that even poses a problem, because we published a study several years ago really trying to answer the question of how much broccoli would you need to eat, or how much celery or spinach or cabbage to get enough nitrate that your body could generate nitric oxide from it. And what we found was shocking, because it depends on where you live. So if you live in Dallas or Chicago, you can eat, you know, celery that's enriched in nitrate and get sufficient nitrate, dependent upon some other factors. But if you lived in New York or other parts of the country, the farming practices are different, and you can't get enough nitrate from your vegetables to give the body what it needs to make nitric oxide. So just like Americans are deficient in things like magnesium and chromium and selenium, it appears we may be a nitrate deficient society. But it gets even more complicated than that, because we need bacteria in and on the mouth and also in our digestive tract to reduce nitrate to nitric oxide. And so with 200 million Americans waking up every morning and using mouthwash, you could be doing all the right things and eating a plant-based vegetarian diet, but you're never going to get a nitric oxide benefit from that if you don't have the right oral bacteria. So 200 million Americans won't respond to nitrate-based therapies or even eating a good diet. We've had a problem with overprescribing antibiotics. Antibiotics kill the bad bacteria that's infectious, but they also kill the good bacteria that help generate nitric oxide. And then the other thing are antacids. You need antacids, or you need acid, stomach acid, for this pathway to work too. And I think there's 189 million prescriptions written for proton pump inhibitors, and that's not even counting the ones you get over the counter. So the net of all this is that we can do all the things we're supposed to do or think we're supposed to do, like eating a good diet, but we get in our own way. And so everything we do, from oral hygienic practices to taking antacids for reflux, or not even eating a good diet, this leads to total body nitric oxide insufficiency, leads to high blood pressure, leads to sexual dysfunction, leads to vascular dementia. In fact, every human chronic disease is associated with loss of nitric oxide. So to me, it's no wonder that we have the sickest people on earth despite spending the most money per capita, because no one's ever focused on fixing the nitric oxide production pathways.
Wow. And so diet may not do that even if you're on the best diet, because you're missing the bacteria.
That's right.
So you want to I want to expand on that topic a little bit, so because people may not understand, like, we're more bacteria than human, and our microbiome, as being learned and coming out in the more recent years, have so many different factors at play in our body than just help us digest our food. They make different, metabolites and poop out fats and antioxidants and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But here's another one, mouthwash. Oh, I'm using a natural mouthwash, John. Well, even essential oils and things could be antibacterial and may kill the bacteria that we need to make that conversion happen. So you want to talk more about, is there like a bacteria supplement you could get, or how would you get this bacteria to start converting and not kill it, but you want to also keep your mouth relatively clean so you don't get the bad bacteria in the cavities? Yeah, so this is an emerging field, and it's relatively new discovery, but what's clear is that if you use mouthwash, we see an increase in blood pressure. So that's the first demonstration that these bacteria that live in our mouth are affecting systemic blood pressure. Wow. And that's a really complete change in paradigm, especially for managing blood pressure. And so just some statistics: 2 out of 3 people in the US have high blood pressure. And 50% of the people that are given antihypertensive medications, prescription medications, they're unmanaged, meaning wow, the medicines aren't working. So to me, the explanation is clear. It's not a renin-angiotensin problem or a fluid problem that you can correct with medications. It's an oral dysbiosis. So there's no drugs that affect this. And to my knowledge, I filed a number of patents on this, but there's no oral probiotic or prebiotic available that can repopulate these communities. But I think it may not be necessary, because there's a number of bacteria that live in our mouth, and there are a number of bacteria competing for limited resources. And so if we give these bugs nitrate or nitrite, for example, as a prebiotic, then typically the bad bugs are sensitive to nitric oxide. They'll effectively kill off, and then you allow the good nitrate-reducing bacteria to flourish. So basically the bacteria is already in there, or you maybe bring that in by eating greens and celery that they may be existing on, which I don't know.
Yeah, you're just giving them substrate then to respire on.
Basically going to give them food to live, So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So it's kind of like, right, we need to eat the beneficial foods for the, bacteria, and that's not like eating, processed foods and junk foods. It's like, eating greens and whatnot. So that good point. So there's 2 pathways. So let's talk about that first pathway, because that's kind of interesting to me. So like, we basically have this enzyme. So can we replace that enzyme that's inside us to make more of the nitric oxide? Because it's disappearing, because our body makes it over time and it dissipates?
Well, the enzyme never really disappears. It's what we call a homodimer. So it comes together in these, it's like twins, but they have to couple to generate nitric oxide. So over time, this enzyme undergoes oxidative stress, and it basically becomes dysfunctional. There's some genetic predispositions that will lead to the downregulation of that, but mostly it's a loss of function. And so what we've figured out is how to restore the function of that enzyme. So the technology that I've been involved in and really tried to innovate and create over the past 20 years is to do 2 things. Number one, if your body can't make nitric oxide, then we do it for you. So whether you're using drugs that are inhibiting nitric oxide production, whether using antiseptic mouthwash, you're on antibiotics, you have to take antacids for reflux, you have a poor diet and you don't exercise, that's like the worst case scenario. So people need help that are in that condition. So if their body can't make nitric oxide, then we do it for you. And then number two, we understand the enzymology and biochemistry to the extent that we can recouple that enzyme and basically improve the body's own ability to make nitric oxide. And that's a very important concept, because it's my belief that if we give the body what it needs and get rid of the things that are inhibiting or stopping the body doing what it normally does, the body heals itself.
Yeah.
So we focused on nitric oxide. We know what the body needs to make nitric oxide. We know what people do to inhibit the production of nitric oxide. And it's pretty simple after that.
All right. So another thing I want to talk about is, there's some plant-based doctors out there that say, oh, you need to make nitric oxide because it is such a beneficial compound. They understand this, and they just say, eat a handful of greens or, this many greens with every meal so that you can make, you can keep your bacteria happy and then also make more nitric oxide. That is, and they're presupposing that there are the nitrates in the food that are going to get converted.
That's right.
So, so if there is nitrates in the food that are going to get converted, what would be a good amount of greens to eat per day, per meal, or per whatever, to try to make enough if you're converting properly, or you think you're converting properly?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, and we don't know the answer to that because it depends on where you live, where you buy your vegetables, whether they're conventionally or organically grown, and again, the region. So the one example we used was like in Dallas. So you could eat 6 stalks of celery based on the celery we bought in Dallas, and you need 300, 400 milligrams of nitrate if that system is intact to be able to lower blood, if it's working. But you would have to eat like 60 or 70 stalks of celery in New York because there's less nitrate in that celery than there is in
the celery
in the Midwest.
You bought in this particular
right.
instance, not across. We don't know about every head because it could be from a different farm.
Yeah, and we've actually taken beets off Whole Foods, 2 beets sitting next to one another in the produce stand, take it back to the lab, and there'll be as much as 100-fold or 100% difference in the amount of nitrate in the beets. So there's no normalization or standardization of that. So it's impossible to make dietary recommendations on where you need 4 servings of celery or 4 servings of beets or spinach. It's dependent upon where you get your vegetables. The other interesting finding from that paper was that organically grown vegetables have about 30 to 50% less nitrate than conventionally grown.
Less. You guys hear that? Organic has less nitrate in this situation.
That's right.
And I'll explain why in a minute.
Yeah, so you get the benefit of not having herbicides and pesticides in your food, but the downside of that is you're not getting enough nitrate from these organically grown vegetables. So it's almost like you have to take something to give your body what it needs to make nitric oxide. We can't always do it from diet, just because these systems that are intact or supposed to be intact in the human body aren't, and then people suffer the consequences of that.
Wow, amazing. So yeah, vegetables may not be doing it if the vegetables don't have the nitrate in there for the bacteria.
Or the person don't have the right bacteria.
And the person don't have the right. Wow. So you can't even say eat this many greens because you're not even going to say that because it could be different where you live, and so you're not, and it just is dependent. So people just have to basically get the food, test it themselves, see what's in there, and then they can make sure they're getting enough.
But who's going to do that?
And then also and this is not just with nitrate. There's so many different trace minerals and nutrients in a food, and we have these standardized tests where they might have tested this thing in the 1950s, and this is the nutrition in it based on this one test. But there's so many different factors on, when was the produce harvested, how is it grown, what is the genetic variety. There's so many different things, so I try to take some of those out of the equation by growing my own food and making sure I have really good soil with the whole process working. And here's the thing, why in this instance conventional food could be better than organic food in terms of nitrate is because of the fertilizer being used. Basically in conventional food, they're basically just putting nitrate-based fertilizers in there.
That's right.
They're pumping the ground to this stuff that's water soluble, so the plant takes it in my opinion in an abnormal fashion, which in this situation is good. So you get those nitrate-rich foods, but also it's making them very imbalanced in terms of other minerals if you look at the whole spectrum, and also of course pesticides and whatnot. So in my opinion, the natural method to do this is to have good soil biology, fungi, bacteria, good, organic matter, and good trace minerals in the soil, and let all that work together, and then they'll pull good nutrients into the plant, and also have good genetics and good plants.
I would agree.
So that's a whole nother discussion topic. So doctor, getting back to the nitrate issue. So, they say that certain vegetables, have more nitrate than others. So beets, they say beets, like drink beet juice, eat beets, blah, blah, blah. Rhubarb, I guess, is another one that may be pretty high. So what are some of the top vegetables that should contain nitrates, based on your research?
Well, again, it depends on where you get them, but kind of from a statistical average, beets are high in nitrates, some beets, as I mentioned. Right. Spinach, arugula, kale, your dark green leafy vegetables. But here's the problem. Here's the problem and the confusion for consumers, because if you go to a retail grocer and you look on the shelves, you'll see probably a dozen beetroot powder products or green food products that are positioned as healthy nutrition supplements or nutritional products to replete the body of these. I've tested these. I have, I think, nearly 20 issued U.S. and international patents on nitric oxide. So I'm obligated to test these products. Number one, to see if they're infringing upon any of my patents. But number two, just to see if there's products out there that are working that maybe somebody's thought something a little bit differently than I have. And I've tested 4 or 5 dozen of these different branded beet products. And
so beet powders,
beet
juice powders, and different things.
And probably 80% of them contain zero nitrate.
Zero nitrate?
Zero nitrate. So these are beet powders you can buy for 10 to 12 bucks, 15 bucks. You may get, and I haven't looked at the nutrient density of other things, but you get zero nitric oxide benefit from these beet powders. It's a dead beet product. And so
dead beet.
It's a dead beet. So it's going to turn your poop pink. It's going to turn your urine pink, but you're not going to get any nutrient benefit in terms of nitric oxide.
Right.
So again, there's no standardization. It's deceptive marketing. In many cases, a lot of these companies don't even know what nitric oxide is. They just see this huge market and demand for beets, so they go, well, we'll create a beet product. Well, what we focused on is generating nitric oxide products. That's our metric. That will always be our metric. And so that's how we differentiate our technology from others. And we have patents on this, so no one else can do what we do.
Wow. So yeah, think about that next time you buy beet powder. If you're trying to get the nitric oxide benefit, not to say there's definitely still betalains in there, that's kind of what makes it red.
Right.
Beets are healthy for many other reasons. But I want to try to eat one food and get all those needs met, and not just like, I have to eat this beet powder for this, and then I got to get some other beets to get the nitric oxide. Then it just kind of gets kind of crazy. So then another thing, I know I have a lot of people out there that are just really like into fruit. They just like to eat fruit. They really don't like to eat vegetables a whole lot. So what would you say to people that are just eating like fruit? I know fruit traditionally contains, lower levels of nitrate. So if someone goes on a mostly fruit diet with very little vegetables, maybe they eat some romaine sometimes, would that kind of person be able to get enough nitrate to make enough nitric
Now,
oxide?
really, there's not a lot of nitrate, relatively speaking, in fruits as compared to vegetables. Unless you're metabolically active, because there's a lot of simple carbohydrates and fructose found naturally in fruits, you got to burn that off. But in terms of nitric oxide, you get a lot of antioxidant benefits from fruits, so it can help recouple the NOS enzyme. But for the most part, fruits don't do much in terms of generating nitric oxide.
So especially if, say, somebody's like they're older, more mature, so their intrinsic nitric oxide production has gone down.
Right.
And so a high fruit diet without many vegetables may not be a good thing to do.
That's right. Look, you have to employ strategies that restore and replete nitric oxide production. If you're not doing that, then you're not being effective at giving your body what it needs to heal, to repair, and to perform optimally. And I think that's what we're all here for, to live as long as we can, but to live a quality of life that we don't have to go on drug therapy. We can enjoy our kids, our grandkids, great-grandkids, and we can't do this if we have multi-system failure and heart disease and dementia, and all that basically can't happen if we prevent the loss of nitric oxide production.
So back to the beet thing, and I know like there's professional athletes now juicing literally with beets to try to get better athletic and do get actually better athletic performance. Now, is that specifically related to the nitric oxide production and all this, and you want to explain that?
Yeah, it is. So we've standardized the nitric oxide content of our beet product. We've got, I think, 190 professional NCAA Olympic athletes that are using our beet root technology because it works. We can demonstrate it works. We detect nitric oxide coming off of it when it's consumed. We measure the increased production of nitric oxide in the actual person after they consume it, and performance improves. So those are the metrics which we set the standard on, and that's why we have so many teams that use our beet root technology.
So just drinking a beet juice may not give you but you may not get the benefits because it's not in the beets in the first place. Whereas if you get, your standardized product, and once again, many products out there are not standardized, you're basically, playing Russian roulette literally with your performance and also your health literally.
That's right. And so what the technology we've incorporated is that we don't rely on the bacteria. So we provide the natural product chemistry that even if you don't have the right bacteria, that we're still going to generate nitric oxide in that human body, because everybody in the U.S. has a different oral microbiome. All of us have somewhat different genetics and epigenetic regulation of our genes. And so we have to provide product technology that works in everyone. I don't want to develop a product technology that only works in 50% of the people. So you have to have a little bit of know-how and innovation to do that, and that's where our product technology differs from anything else on the planet.
So, Doctor, I want to know the function of nitric oxide in healing our body, because people think it's about sports, or think it's only about heart disease, or think it's about cardiovascular disease or whatever. But I know literally nitric oxide plays a foundational role in our body's ability to heal. And if you start losing this, then your body does not heal as well. So you want to talk about some of these factors?
Sure. So if you look at the basic tenets of aging, it's really we wear ourselves out and we have to regenerate tissues or cells that work properly. Yeah. And so in order to do that, it was recognized, nitric oxide was discovered back in the late 70s, early 80s. A Nobel Prize was awarded in 1998. So this is a fundamental, paradigm-changing discovery that's basically 20 years old. So it was discovered in the late 90s that nitric oxide is the signal that tells our own stem cells to mobilize, to go to the site of injury or wherever there's a dysfunctional cell or tissue, and then regenerate.
Wow.
So it tells our stem cells to actually go heal. And so in terms, if you look at this from whether it's an injury you've had or if you've got a cut, then nitric oxide is the signal that says, oh, I've got an injury, I need to mobilize things and heal that wound. Or whether it's a sports injury you have to heal and recover. Or if it's just basic aging, you have to regenerate cells of the liver, of the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. You've got to regenerate heart muscle and skeletal muscle. And so if your body can't make nitric oxide, it never gets the signal that, oh, I've got some dysfunction over here that I need to, create new cells that work properly. And if you don't do that, then those cells become dysfunctional, that tissue and organ becomes dysfunctional, and it eventually fails. And that's called heart attack, stroke, liver failure, kidney failure, diabetes, the things that Americans are faced with today.
Wow, so I know a lot of, people that eat meat or conventional eaters always ask vegetarians or vegans, where do you get your protein? There should be a shirt. Where do you get your nitric oxide? Like, seriously,
that's a fundamental question.
It's kind of like, another one, it's like could be a key nutrient like B12, right? B12, and you want to relate like methylation and nitric oxide and how those two are related, I saw in your slide.
Yeah, so there's some genetic predisposition. So there's these things called single nucleotide polymorphisms, that if you don't have one copy of a gene that codes for a specific protein, then you have less function of that protein. So one of the most common is called MTHFR, so it's methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene. It's involved in the methylation cycle. That's what it's primarily known for. But all these biochemical pathways are kind of like cogs in a wheel, so they feed into one another. And so the MTHFR enzyme is responsible for reducing biopterin to tetrahydrobiopterin, or BH4. And it's that molecule that's the rate-limiting step in nitric oxide production. So if you have an MTHFR SNP, which best estimations are about 45 to 50% of the U.S. population, then you've become compromised in your ability to make nitric oxide through the nitric oxide synthase enzyme. Or conversion of L-arginine. So you become compromised. We know that these people are predisposed to certain conditions. And so, again, it all boils down to if you can restore the production of nitric oxide, you can overcome even these genetic issues. So, I joke and half jokingly say that genetics isn't an excuse anymore, because we can turn genes on and off through epigenetics and primarily through the foods we eat and the nutrients we get. And so, but again, I think the fundamental principle here is that if you're not focusing on restoring nitric oxide production, you're not giving your body what it needs to perform optimally and to live your best life.
Right. Wow. Amazing. So yeah, before you guys run out and buy a supplement, because I'm not going to tell everybody to buy supplements to meet needs that we should be getting through our food, I think the first step is to test. So I know you have some test strips here, the human and nitric oxide indicator strips. And so you want to talk about these strips and how they work, and could I try one here for the camera? And so I just, what do I do on this?
So these, when we started the nitric oxide field 15, 20 years ago, there was not a nitric oxide test. So the number one question we got was, how do I know if I'm nitric oxide deficient? This isn't like you can go to your physician and he can tell you what your vitamin D levels are, what your cholesterol levels are. Nitric oxide, although we use it in the research lab, we can quantify it, we can measure it. It's not part of a routine clinical diagnostic or exam.
And it usually be on a blood test, right?
Yeah, usually on a blood test. So I developed these colorimetric test strips. So you apply your saliva to the end of the test strip, and
so just lick the test strip here.
Yeah. So what we're looking for is the ability to reduce nitrate to nitrite. So if you just get a concentrated saliva sample, apply it to that test strip, and then if it turns pink, then it'll give you an indication that it's the brighter the pink, the more nitric oxide you have, or what we call nitric oxide availability. So we're not actually measuring nitric oxide here, we're measuring part of this enterosalivary circuit. But what it really tells us is how well your body is either generating nitric oxide or regenerating nitric oxide from your diet. So it can tell us a lot. So this is really the first and only indicator test strips on how well your body is able to maintain some level of nitric oxide production. So this is a useful tool. It's it's a good tool to have in your toolbox, but it's not the end all be all.
Right. Yeah. So if you're definitely low on this, it's going to be kind of more like white, really light pink. That means, in my opinion, if I had that, I would be definitely supplementing. And if you're more on the darker side, which I'm probably not quite to the
optimal,
I'd say that's optimal.
Yeah.
That's about optimal. So I'm optimal on this chart. So what does that mean? Does that mean I have enough nitric oxide, or is there another way besides a simple, saliva test that I could test to make sure? Because I want to make sure I have it, and if not, I'm gonna eat. Well, I already eat a lot of greens, so I guess the next step. If that's not working, then I take the supplement that's proven to work, right?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we always want to use diet and lifestyle as a first line therapy. So if you can do things and give your body what it needs and generate nitric oxide, it looks like your body is, then keep doing what you're doing. Don't get away from what's working. So this is a good indication, but a better readout are functional measurements. So even though you may show normal on here, if your blood pressure is elevated, that tells me that your body is not making sufficient nitric oxide to maintain normal blood pressure. If you have some degree of sexual dysfunction, that's really the first sign and symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. And 50% of the men over the age of 40 self-report some degree of erectile dysfunction. And most men,
I don't have any.
most men aren't going to admit it, right? So the 50%, I think, is a gross underestimation. So this is a good tool, as I mentioned. But if you have an elevation of blood pressure, if you become insulin resistant, if you're having some dementia or loss of memory, and some sexual dysfunction, those are the hallmark signs and symptoms of insufficient nitric oxide production.
So if you have excess, because everybody always likes to do it, I could be better sexual performer in bed if I took the supplement. Is that going to work too?
Well, we have some evidence of that, but what you want to do, we want to optimize.
Yes,
right?
Of course. Not too much, not too little. You want to have just the right amount, because too much or too little, not a good thing. I'd rather have a little bit too much than too little, but you want to get, just hit the bullseye.
That's right. And so we know how much nitric oxide the normal, healthy human body makes in 24 hours. And so that's what we try to recapitulate in all of our product technology. So as you hit it on the head, too little nitric oxide's bad, too much nitric oxide can be bad. What we have to do is give the body what it's used to seeing. That way it can actually do what it's designed to do.
So I guess another good test, if you are sufficient on the test strips like I am, and you maybe think your blood pressure is high, is I'd go on the supplement and take the supplement for a period of time and see if that normalizes or brings your, you know, your standard level of your you know, blood pressure down, and then get off the supplement and see if it goes back up. Then you know, like, okay, even though my test is good, I'm not sufficient.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, just like many, like B12 is another one of those nutrients, or vitamin D. I mean, to me, this is as important, if not even more so important than those guys, you know, let's say. But yeah, so whatever. So wow, this is very interesting. So finding that out, let's go ahead and talk more about the supplement. So once again, you know, the beet powders are not the same as this. This is the professional version here. It's the Neo 40 professional clinical strength daily heart and circulation formula. And it's basically just these like little tablets. So what's special about your tablets than any other tablet that somebody could get at the health food store or whatever? Because I know there's lots of different, you know, nitric oxide supplements they say is good. I mean, you talked about the citrulline and the arginine and some of these things, which, you know, that might just be, you know, putting gas in a car that doesn't have a spark. You know?
That's right.
So what makes your product different? I see there's like some vitamin C, actually B12, folate, and proprietary nitric oxide blend, including beet powder, hawthorn berry extract, and some actually citrulline and some what, nitrate?
Yeah, sodium nitrate.
Yeah.
So what we've done is, again, going back to kind of the problems of people's inability to generate nitric oxide. So when you pop this lozenge, so it's an orally disintegrating tablet.
Could I try one?
Yeah, sure. So you pop this, you put it in your mouth, and it'll take about 5 to 6 minutes to completely dissolve.
Okay, it's like one of those like acerola chewable seeds I had when I was a kid.
But as this lozenge is dissolving, this matrix is falling apart, and we're generating about 25 to 30 parts per million NO gas.
Wow.
So if I put an NO analyzer in your mouth right now, we can detect nitric oxide coming off this lozenge. So again, it proves the principle that if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. There's no other technology like this. And so I think when people are looking for products, look for patents. So there are actually my US issued patents that are listed on the back of this. So no one else can do what we do, because
even if they have the same ingredients, it's not going to do the same, because you got to formulate in a special way. And
that's right. It's tricky to do what we do. Nitric oxide is a gas with a half-life of less than 1 second. So to be able to capture this fleeting molecule in a product that has a very stable shelf life, and that it's activated by your own saliva, that generates nitric oxide, and within 10 to 20 seconds we can see dilation of the carotid arteries.
Just from taking one of these
just
tablets.
taking one of those. So
Wow.
we see, and we can quantify the increase in blood flow and circulation.
So if somebody's having some problems, I mean, with a stroke or something, man, shove a bunch of these in their mouth.
Well, I encourage.
I mean, of course, get regular medical. Call the 911
Yes,
first, but.
Well, I think it's important. This is a dietary supplement, so it's not intended to treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. But the point is, you can go on PubMed and look at the published clinical trials on this. We have, I think, 6 peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trials. So not only do we have patents on this product technology, but we actually put it to test in randomized controlled clinical trials. So we know it works. We can quantify it, the amount of nitric oxide. And we've had this on the market for about 9 years, sold tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of products. And I get dozens of emails and phone calls every week on people that this product has changed their lives. So it's the most gratifying thing to hear. It said if you've changed the life of a person, you've changed the world. You've certainly changed their world. And so this, I feel very confident that we've done something that no one else has been able to do. And in my very biased but professional opinion, it will change the world.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, especially like somebody like my brother, right? He does not eat enough greens. He does not have a good diet. I mean, he's over 40. You should definitely, I'm going to get him some of this stuff, because I mean, this is only going to help, in my opinion, because it's such a foundational nutrient that may be deficient, you know, in our diets if we're not, especially as we're getting more mature in our age, and especially have an improper diet. Now, if you're in a proper diet, this may not make a big difference, right? But unfortunately, most people don't have a proper diet, and proper, I mean,
That's right.
like eating lots of greens. I mean, I juice greens, beets on a regular basis. I drink them every day. and hopefully I'm making enough. But if not, oh, so here's the thing, like, I always like insurance, right? And so insurance, like, even though you're eating really well, could you just take one of these as insurance? But I don't want to make sure I don't want to get too much nitric oxide. So, you know, how much would what's a dosage on these, and could somebody take too much? Like, I need nitric oxide, I'm going to take 6.
Yeah, I mean, if you take, as it indicated, 1 to 2 lozenges per day, it's extremely safe. If you take, you know, this whole box, your blood pressure is probably going to drop, and you may pass out because you have orthostatic hypotension or low blood pressure. But to me, the most important use of this technology is as a preventative or as a prophylaxis. So we're bombarded every day with things in the environment, by things we do or don't do in our body that shut down nitric oxide production. And so I'm 45 years old, I have the biological age of a 26-year-old through all this testing. I probably don't eat an optimal diet, but I take this every day. And I know that if I can prevent the loss of nitric oxide production, that I'm going to continue to perform optimally for many, many years beyond my peers. So don't wait until you become nitric oxide deficient and symptoms set in. Get ahead of the curve. And I think that's the problem with Western medicine, is it's a reactive practice. People don't go to the doctor, and we make fear-based decisions. We don't change until there's a crisis. So I think we have to be proactive. And one of the most effective things you can do to be proactive for your own health is to ensure you never lose the ability to generate nitric oxide.
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with you. So, you know, foundational in that is eating the beets and some of the greens. Make sure you're getting it regularly, and different types from different farms, from different areas, because you don't have the lab to test the nitrate in every one. But if you go to different farms, grow your own, and eat enough quantity, you could enough quantity could take the place of high quality specific foods that are missing.
That's right.
Because you're just eating so much more. So that's why one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate, and we'll give a disclaimer, I do sell juicers for a living, but the juicers allow you to concentrate the amount of vegetables you could eat. I mean, already today I had, 7 pounds of vegetables in
well, it's
in juice
yeah,
form.
I think it's showing up here. So
I had 3 pounds of celery already, 4 pounds of, beets, carrots, ginger, turmeric, already within me, so all concentrated. So, all right, doctor, so this has been very helpful for people. Now, I know you're continuing your research, because aside from, just having this orally, you're now getting into new research on how we could even heal more quickly and even have softer skin, because I know the skincare market is huge. People don't want to have those wrinkles. How can the nitric oxide actually help prevent wrinkles?
Well, it's with any aging process, so it's really loss of blood flow. So the small blood vessels that perfuse the dermis on the face, or really any part of the skin, becomes compromised, and you have less blood flow to the skin. So fine lines, wrinkles, the cells of the face don't turn over as quickly, so you get less regeneration. And the consequence of that is you have fine lines, wrinkles, poor complexion.
And less collagen also.
Less collagen, and you lose hydration. So our approach is that, okay, if we can increase perfusion and open up those small blood vessels of the face, or really anywhere you want to apply it, then you're going to deliver oxygen and nutrients to wherever you apply it. And so my overall mission is to implement nitric oxide technologies across all the spectrum of markets. We've been successful in the nutrition dietary supplement space. We developed a topical nitric oxide serum, so we can actually apply this, and this is a really cool show and tell, because it's dual chamber. You take one pump from one side, one pump from the other, and then if you mix these together, it generates nitric oxide gas, and so it'll dilate blood vessels. You'll see it turn pink from the increase in capillary recruitment. And so if you apply this really to wherever you want, this is designed as a facial serum, but you can open up the small blood vessels of the dermis. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it actually, wherever I apply this, it turns pink, indicative of what we call hyperemia, or an increase in blood flow and circulation.
Oh, wow.
So again, any age-related condition, whether it's a failing heart, or kidney dysfunction, or liver dysfunction, or loss of memory through vascular dementia, it's all a blood flow problem. So poor complexion, fine lines, wrinkles, It's a blood flow problem.
Acne?
Acne, it's a blood flow problem, and it's a bacterial problem. So if we do what we designed to do, is if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you, and then give your body what it needs to make nitric oxide. The body's self-healing.
Wow. So just to get this straight, so taking the supplements will help increase the blood flow because
Systemically.
systemically, so even in your, your skin and everywhere in your body. But then if you want more isolated and definite improvement in certain areas, then you could use this product. Now, this product, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's dual chambers, right? So that means you have to like press out one and then you press out the other one. And for those of you guys that are old school, that have been, know about these things, epoxy,
yeah, that's right.
I grew up with epoxy, and you had to actually have two different things. And then once you mix them together, then they get really hard. It's like one of the hardest glues on the planet, right? And if you put them together at the same time in the tube, they harden and then your glue's no good. So with these, you got two different things. So you want to explain why there's two different things, and then you have to basically rub them together like I'm doing now.
Yeah, so we put two components that when they come together, the chemistry is such that it generates nitric oxide gas. And so the nitric oxide is a fleeting molecule. Once it's produced, it's gone in less than a second. So part of it diffuses into the headspace, I guess above it, but part of it diffuses into the dermis and opens up the small vessels of the skin. So it's only when these components, the epoxy is the perfect example. The chemistry is such that when and only when these two components combine that you generate nitric oxide gas.
Wow.
And so you can see it within a matter of 2 to 3 seconds. You see the product work. In fact, it's the only cosmetic product, well, I wouldn't say that, the Plexiderm has been popular, but you can, it's almost like a plasticizer though. But this, you don't have to guess if your cosmetic product is working.
Because you apply it.
You see it. You can see it within a matter of seconds.
So like if I just, this is smoother basically, what I'm seeing. Wow, so how long does this effect last? So say you're going out to some fancy date night, you want to put it on so you look 10 years younger. But then at the end of the night, it's getting dark, hopefully you didn't have no drinks, and they're looking at you. You don't look as good as you did when you were earlier.
No, well look, the human body is pretty remarkable in the fact that if you get oxygen and nutrients to individual cells of the body, then they do what they're designed to do. So we can do this acutely. We recommend putting this on once or twice a day. After 30 days, we're seeing really transformative results in terms of, bags under eyes, the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, anything that's beautifying or cosmetic in the face, we're seeing enormous transformative differences.
So this is like a cumulative effect, right? So if you stop taking the product, will you start getting the wrinkles back, or how does that work?
Yeah, if you don't change your lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle is key. There's videos on me on why my skin looks so good, and it's not because I've been taking this product all these years. This product is actually new, but maybe if I start taking it, I can even be better.
That's right.
It's because I have a proper diet, and I'm not putting the toxins in, and I'm actually giving all the things my body needs to heal, regenerate, make collagen, and have excellent blood flow.
Yeah, so that you make a good point. This isn't a substitute for you making bad decisions, right? This isn't, I think if you utilize this technology to prevent the loss of nitric oxide production, but there's nothing more foundational or important than a good diet, being physically active, and leading a good lifestyle. So if you eliminate toxins in the body and give your body what it needs from a nutrient standpoint, the body heals itself and you can overcome a lot of human disease that plagues America today.
Wow, amazing. These are some amazing products, and thank you for all your work with the nitric oxide to make me, my viewers, and everybody out there more familiar with this, because it is so foundational. And I see so many people that are eating a pretty good diet, and when they get up there in years, their health starts to fall. And this may, and I'm not saying it is, but it may be one of those reasons, because some people think, oh, I'm just gonna eat a natural diet and be fine. But if the nutrients are in the food, the right bacteria, that may not be fine. So test and know. So aside from the test strips, actually, is there a deeper way that if I really want to know my nitric oxide levels, is there a way I could do that besides the test strips? How do you test it in the lab for all your different published studies that you do, actually?
Well, there's some FDA-cleared medical devices that look at what we refer to as flow-mediated dilatation. So there's, you can basically occlude the blood flow to the forearm for 5 minutes, you release the cuff, and you can actually see how well your blood vessels dilate. So if they make a lot of nitric oxide, it's called a reactive hyperemia. Then we know what's called endothelial function. So these are tests that...
Functional tests.
Yeah, functional tests, which is always much more important and telling than
Absolutely.
biochemical tests.
Absolutely.
So again, those are important. They're FDA cleared medical devices. A lot of physicians' offices have them. But to me, it's more about your symptoms. If you have symptoms of erectile dysfunction, if you have chronic fatigue and you have trouble climbing a flight of steps without losing your breath, if you're having cognitive problems and losing your memory, if your blood glucose is elevating and you're developing insulin-resistant type 2 diabetes, or if you have peripheral neuropathy, fundamentally these are loss of nitric oxide production. You can see it in the literature. The science is valid. Science has even proven in clinical trials in humans that is due to loss of nitric oxide production. So to me, it's always about symptoms. Testing is important, but if you're having a lot of these things, then it's quite obvious it's the loss of nitric oxide. So I think the next best thing, besides changing your diet and lifestyle, is if you want to supplement your diet with some technology that's known and proven and patented to do that, then I think it's a very wise investment.
And probably I'd just say, like I take a B12 supplement because I'm not sure I'm going to have B12 or I'm not converting properly, and I take multiple forms of B12, not just methyl or cyano or whatever, because I don't know what my body needs. So I'm probably just going to start taking this, at least not maybe all the time, but just in limited amounts, and see if it makes a difference for me. And that's probably what I'd recommend for you guys out there that aren't sure. Maybe do the saliva test first. If it's low, then definitely that's an indicator. Even if it's high, then you might want to supplement and see if it makes a difference for you. If it does, continue. If it doesn't, all right, well, that didn't work. But then don't just say, oh, it didn't work forever. Try another couple years, because maybe your status is going to change.
Well, I think it's important because people to manage expectations. So when I pop this, and you can comment as well, I don't feel any different.
Yeah,
because I know my body makes sufficient nitric oxide, but this is just a good daily boost. Insurance.
Just in case.
That my body's never going to be deplete in nitric oxide. But to the contrary, we have people that
are usually depleted.
Yeah, usually depleted, that have trouble breathing or have a lot of symptoms, and they take this, and within 3 seconds they'll notice a difference. So that's kind of the extreme, the spectrum of kind of expectations. So don't expect to take this and you're immediately going to feel like, oh, it's life-changing. It's not. We don't feel a lot of times an increase in blood flow like to our brain. So when I'm trying to think or give a lecture or remember where I left my keys, our body is programmed as such that I have to increase blood flow to the prefrontal cortex to recall that memory. I don't feel that increase in blood flow, but we can measure it through functional MRI. We can measure an increase in blood flow through ultrasound, but you may or may not feel that, but that's how your body works.
Wow. So this has been so educational, so informative. Now, I knew you're even working on further developing, because now you have the supplement, now you have the cosmetic, but now you've been going further into wound care. And this is how important nitric oxide is, guys. That's why I'm mentioning this, because now you're getting into wound care and how you could rapidly increase wound healing by your new innovation. Can you even talk about that yet? Because it's kind of like it's going to be a drug, right? FDA.
Yeah, we're going through FDA approval for these new technologies. So again, I think nitric oxide is so fundamentally important and foundational to human health that you have to be able to implement this in different segments of healthcare. So this is always, from a nutrition dietary supplement standpoint, it's very important for helping improve or helping support, healthy functions. We can't make drug claims, so this is not intended to treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. This product is positioned as a cosmetic, so it improves, it has beautifying qualities, but we know through clinical trials and just through the basic sciences of nitric oxide, and even my own personal experience with my dad treating a decubitus ulcer, non-healing ulcers, that if we apply nitric oxide in and around the wound, it actually gets blood flow to the wound. You get granulation. Wounds don't heal because typically they're infected and there's decreased blood flow to that wound. So if you can kill the infection and improve blood flow, again, the body heals itself. So there's an important application in wound care. There's an important application in acne. It's a huge problem in the teenage population. And again, it's poor blood flow. It's dysbiosis. If you can kill the bacteria, increase blood flow, activate the immune system, acne goes away. So there are many, perhaps much more important applications for nitric oxide than what we've experienced in the dietary supplement for the past 10 years and more recently in the cosmetic. But again, my mission and lifelong objective is to we know how to make nitric oxide. And so I have a responsibility and an obligation to get this in the hands of millions of people, billions of people around the globe that suffer from health issues that aren't currently being treated by modern medical therapies or techniques.
So the question I have is, what percentage increase in healing have you seen with some of your dad's ulcer, and I guess you have a son or something that broke or messed up his ankle or something? How much faster did they heal using some of the products that you're developing versus what it would have taken normally?
Well, in my dad's case, who's a 70-year-old paraplegic from a car accident in 1984 with a number of comorbidities, all the wound care docs I took him to said that wound would never heal. And we healed it over a period of about a year and a half or 2 years.
So that took a while.
It took a while, but
supposedly would have never healed.
Would have never healed, and he would have succumbed to it. And in my son's case, my 8-year-old, who had a ATV accident and degloved his right foot.
Degloved? That means like the whole skin came off and you just saw the bone, right?
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. So the surgeon said, 6 to 9 months, probably loss of function of that foot, multiple plastic surgeries, and we applied a topical nitric oxide. Today, it's been almost a year, but within 6 weeks, the wound had completely healed. Today, you can't even really see that there's a scar there.
Wow.
So the surgeons were saying they've never seen this before, and some of these surgeons have been doing this at Texas Children's for 20 or 30 years. So it was eye-opening to them. They go, tell me what you're doing to this, because we need this technology.
Wow. That's amazing. That's basically, it comes down to this nutrient and how important it is and how it could heal wounds that doctors say not healable, and even repair in a much quicker state, functionality. And it's not the nutrient nitric oxide. It's our body's healing it, and we're basically helping the body heal more effectively.
Right. Yeah.
And that's basically what it is.
Yeah, we're facilitating the body's own ability to heal itself. That's what we're doing.
We're getting out of the way and even making it more effective than it would be under its own causes.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, this has been so eye-opening, so amazing. Hopefully it's been eye-opening and amazing to you guys. Once again, what's your website if someone wants to get some of this or the products? Oh, and we didn't even get to talk about your book. So if you guys want to learn about all this stuff, more than just this interview today, Dr. Brian has written so many different books. This is just his latest book here. It's Functional Nitric Oxide Nutrition. I got a copy of this book. I'll be reading it. It says Dietary Strategies to Prevent and Treat Chronic Disease. This should probably be your first stop before you just start getting on something, because I want you guys to really understand this on how important it is, because that'll actually keep you more supplement compliant and make sure you stay on it and do other dietary changes. So you may not need the supplement, because that is, once again, it's like different levels. If I got to take a supplement because it's not in my food, I'm not getting it, I'm going to do it if it's not going to be harmful to me, but I'd rather make all the dietary changes first.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I think this is really 20 years of research in an easy to read, probably about depending on how fast you read, 60 to 80 minute read. But this provides you the fundamental foundation for how diet, a lot of the things we discussed on kind of the limitations of diet, what you can do to optimize your diet. But again, my objective is to provide the proper education so that you as consumers can go out and make informed decisions and not be frauded by a lot of companies who are trying to sell nitric oxide products that don't do anything. So again, I'm not here to sell products. I'm here to educate. This is this book was just published in April, so this is still pretty new. The field is rapidly expanding, but this provides basic education and knowledge, the proper education on nitric oxide. I have a educational website called drnathansbryan.com. That's Dr. Nathan, S as in Scott, BRYAN.com. There's some really cool educational videos on there, a 6-minute video that basically in 6 minutes tells a 20-year story in a very, I think, simple, well-animated, effective video. And so that's, look, I just hope you do your homework, research nitric oxide, find products that work. Kind of the list for me, and what I tell people is look for products that have patents. Most consumers don't pay any attention to the back of a box. But I think it's important, if patents are on a product, it means that there's some research, innovation, and some uniqueness about that technology. Number two, have there been any published clinical trials on it? Most companies don't put a dietary supplement through a clinical trial because they're very expensive, and most products will not show any meaningful effect on an endpoint. And then number three, if it's a nitric oxide product, look at the person or the company behind that. Is the formulator, the inventor, or the product pitchman, has he published anything in the nitric oxide field? I find I come to these conferences and all of a sudden everybody's a nitric oxide expert, but they haven't published one single paper in the nitric oxide literature. So those are just kind of my pet peeves, but you know, they say mimicry is the best form of flattery. So, you know what, I'm convinced that what we're doing is very important. I've been doing this now for 20 years, commercially for 10 years. We've changed thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of lives, and we're just beginning. And so I appreciate the opportunity to help educate. I always look for a platform to tell the nitric oxide story, because I think it truly is one of those instances where what you don't know may kill you, because we try to do the right things, but if we don't understand the basic physiology and mechanism of how things happen, you know, we could be missing the boat.
Wow. So once again, websites for the different products, or just one website, whatever all the information, so people could like learn about you more and follow your work and learn about your educational videos, because he does a lot of educational work in his own right. You know,
and I do a monthly blog. We do a monthly blog, try to provide up-to-date information that's practical, that's applicable, that people can employ in their daily lives.
So what are I'll put the links down below, but just mention them.
Well, the main educational website is drnathansbryan.com. Right. I'll just direct everybody to that one, because that's my most important objective, is to provide education. I'm less interested in selling products.
All right, great. Well, link is down below for that. So, Dr. Bryan, are there any questions that I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, and what would it be, and what would be the answer for my viewers today before we go?
You know, probably the common question I get is who shouldn't take a nitric oxide based product? And the answer to that is we haven't really found anybody. You know, I've got a 8-year-old and 11-year-old kid that take the lozenge before a football game or before a basketball game. But again, I cut it in half, give them a half a dose. But nitric oxide is so fundamental to how the body works that everybody should benefit from taking a patented nitric oxide product technology.
Or ensuring they're getting enough nitrate-rich foods and making it yourself properly. Yeah, which that's a whole.
Yeah, so we have to. But again, over half the population is not going to be able to utilize nitrate from foods, because statistically, 200 million Americans use an antiseptic mouthwash. Another 200 million are on antibiotics. Another 190 million are on proton pump inhibitors.
Well, hopefully none of my viewers are. Oh, and then not even talking about like alkaline water. You're drinking alkaline water, you're messing up your stomach acid pH, and then this is not going to work either. So it takes some. I mean, right. So many different like reasons.
Yeah, we got to get out of our own way, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, so this has been very informative. So, wow, thank you, Doctor, so much.
Thank you.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, want more videos with Dr. Bryan here in the future, give this video a thumbs up. I'll see him at probably different conferences and different places. I get out to Texas sometimes one of these days. Also, be sure to share this video on your social media platforms, on different websites, with other people that you may think need this knowledge that could help. This is a foundational nutrient that our bodies may not be making enough of, and supplementation may be helpful for many people, especially most Americans that are not on good diets, in my opinion. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new and upcoming episodes. I've come out about every 5 to 7 days. You never know where I'll show up. I'll be learning on my YouTube channel. Make sure you click the little bell so you get notified as my new videos come out. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes. My past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 500 episodes at this time on this YouTube channel dedicated to you guys about eating more fruits and vegetables and how they can be beneficial for your health, as well as certain nutrients that may also improve your health as well. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.